Bloodwolf Arts Studio. Unleash the artist within.
Welcome to Bloodwolf Art Studio, and I'm your host, Mr. Moonlight. So today I'm talking about The Raven, a poem written by Edgar Allan Poe, and a little bit about the history and the background behind it. So The Raven was actually inspired by an actual bird that belonged to Charles Dickens, and Edgar Allan Poe and Charles Dickens, they were acquaintances. They didn't stay connected for very long. They offered some critiques to each other's works, and the raven that this was based on was it was a pet of Charles Dickens, and it was like an ornery little bird. Apparently, the thing was always like pecking at the kids and just kind of getting into mischief, and supposedly that was what led to the raven itself being like banished out to the stables, and eventually at some point then there was doing some painting work out there, and they was back when they still had like lead paint, and supposedly the raven was curious about the paint that was being used by the painters because they was careful with it. And while they were gone on break, then like a lunch break or something, then the raven went down there and was like just picking at it and scooping up mouthfuls of it, and ended up dying of lead poisoning. They said he had eaten, the raven had eaten like 1 or 2 pounds of lead paint essentially, and that's what killed the thing. Which is ridiculous, but also kind of funny. Bird would just, I don't know, just because the bird was like, it was like they loved the bird because it was like they loved how it was able to copy the human language. It was able to copy things so well, but the thing was like, and it was like had a mystical quality to it, like the raven is. But it was just like this ornery little bird. It was always like, it was like harassing the dogs and stealing the dogs' food, and it was just stealing things. Supposedly, it was like taking things from the local barbers. Just all the, it was just like stealing things and just kind of mischievous. And so that's how it. But that's how it ended up dying. Um, and The way that Edgar Allan Poe ended up getting acquainted with the bird itself was, um, it was Charles Dickens used it in one of his stories. It's one of his stories called Barnaby Rudge. It was like his first attempt of writing historical fiction, and the book itself was based on the riots in London in 1780. Um, and it was just one of his first attempts at historical fiction, and Edgar Allan Poe ended up doing like some critique on it. He thought it was, he enjoyed it a bit, but one of the characters was, it was a minor character. It was like the pet of the main character, and it was a bird, and his name was Grip, and he was like, in typical fashion of how you would expect a raven, he was like making like dark comedic comments, kind of like almost like a dark comedy relief characters from how it's described, how people talked about it. Um, so that was the bird that it was based on, and basically Edgar Allan Poe, he thought that there was a lot more to the character of the raven, and he wanted to do more with it, and that was ultimately what at least one of the things that led to him writing a poem about it. And it was a very unusual kind of poem. It was really famous, just the rhythm, and the rhythm and the meter and everything about the poem was very, the word that was used, and some of the stuff I was looking at was like very hypnotic, and that ended up being one of the big things that Edgar Allan Poe was known for, was the raven. That was like a nickname. It called the Raven. There's a raven on his tombstone. And so, kind of getting back to when the raven died, and the name was Grip. It was named that in the story, but that was also what Charles Dickens had named the bird itself. But after he died, then he ended up getting a couple other birds afterwards, and he said that it was said that every bird after him seemed to be just like Grip, and they was just like, it was like the bird was like meaner every time he got a new bird. It was like Grip, but it was like meaner, more mischievous than the one before, and he had like 3 different birds. But he was really attached to that first bird, and he ended up having a friend of his stuff the bird, after it died, and he like put it in a glass case, and he like had it over his workspace where he would do his writings. And if you go to Philadelphia, you can actually still see the raven. It's still stuffed. It's still there. You can still see it. It's the exact same bird, and it's in the free library in Philadelphia. So, I mean, if you want to go take a look at some point, if you're in the area or if you're having me traveling, it'd be one of those cool things to kind of go see. And I'll probably go see it at some point. I think that's pretty cool. So that's a little bit about the history behind the raven. It ended up being published in the New York Evening Mirror on January 29th, 1845. So thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow my Facebook page, and follow me also on TikTok as Mr. Moonlight. And I'll see you on the other side.